Shana Tova, everyone. The first time that I learned to seek before I speak was around the kitchen island, sitting with my grandparents. During the years that I lived in New York before rabbinical school, every homecoming to Los Angeles meant at least one of the following conversations. They would say, "So you, Lily," what they meant was, "You, a woman, can be a rabbi." I would say, "Yes." They would say, "Like the type of rabbi who does funerals and gives divrei Torah in front of congregations?" Sometimes patiently, more often impatiently, thinking, "I can't believe I'm about to answer this yet again," I would say, "Yes." Their questions made sense. We are a Russian immigrant family. Until I was 22 years old, I had never seen a female rabbi. I didn't know how I could become one. I just knew that I wanted to. From the start, those voices of doubt from around the kitchen island stayed in my head. "So if you, Lily, become a rabbi, you can do all the same things a man would do?" So I convinced myself I couldn't. I would go to rabbinical school for 5 long years. I would study for the journey and I would enjoy the learning, but I would never take the leap to become the type of rabbi my family couldn't imagine, a pulpit rabbi. These days, there's no kitchen island for us to gather around anymore. And here I am, a pulpit rabbi who gives sermons and does funerals and helps to lead a community and do things that 50 years ago only men could do. And this taught me an essential lesson. Our first answers aren't always our truest answers. But what changed wasn't the questions that were asked around the kitchen island. What changed was my willingness to live in the questions, rather than rush past them to respond. I learned to be a seeker, to live more in the question than in the answer, to let go of the need to know what comes next. And in that process of letting go, that the question wasn't something to rush past, I learned to lean into it. That the uncertainty itself is sacred. Our tradition knows this tension well. Every day of Elul, the month before Rosh Hashanah, we recite Psalm 27, where the psalmist hears God's voice. Lach amar libi bakshu fanai. My heart says to me, seek my face. It is not God speaking from the outside, but the heart itself urging us to seek. The voice inside of us is restless, curious, unwilling to settle for the first answer. The psalm reminds us that seeking is not weakness or indecision. It's the very posture of faith. The commentators tell us that God commands us all to be seekers, but it is only the faithful who seek. To live as seekers is to tune our hearts to that divine call. Bakshu fanai, seek my face. Seek before you speak. I suspect many of you have your own versions of this kitchen island that I describe. Places where conversations test your limits. It could be a sensitive topic with your family, a frustrating post on social media, a coworker you are too quick to respond to. When your first instinct might be no, but your own curiosity could open something new. Times when you defend your initial reaction rather than remaining curious to what might be possible. But there's another option. Recognizing that our first answers aren't always our truest answers. We could sit with discomfort. We could question what seems obvious. we can let our understanding develop over time. If you take one thing away from this sermon, let it be this. Let's spend the Jewish year of 5786 learning to seek before we speak. When we hear something we don't like or want to respond to immediately, take a moment. Say to yourself quietly, "Seek before I speak." And our tradition has been teaching this same lesson for centuries. In our Rosh Hashanah liturgy, we encounter the phrase Hayom Harat Olam, 3 Hebrew words that carry within them an entire theology of possibility. The phrase can be translated many ways. On this day, the world came into being. Or, today, the world stands at birth. Even in these 2 translations, we see a tension that some translations anchor us in the past, creation as something completed long ago, and others suggest that creation is happening right now, in this very moment, that each one of us carries the power to remake our lives and our world today. These words don't just come from an anonymous poet's mind. They actually come from one of the darkest passages in all of our Tanakh. In the book of Jeremiah, the prophet, who was overwhelmed by the weight of his calling, he was crushed by a world that refused to listen, cursed the day of his birth. In his anguish, he wished that his mother's womb had remained Harat Olam, eternally pregnant. For Jeremiah, this represented the ultimate escape from a life that felt unbearable. Better to remain forever in potential, forever unborn, than to face the harsh reality of being born, of existence. His life had become a nightmare of hope deferred, of messages unheeded, of potential forever trapped in disappointment. But the author of Hayom Harat Olam, the prayer that holds the ethos of our Rosh Hashanah prayer for over a millennium, adds just one word, Hayom, today. A tiny shift that turns despair into possibility. The author took Jeremiah's despair, his cry of spiritual exhaustion, and transforms them. Hayom, today, turns eternal waiting into eternal becoming. No longer trapped in the suffocating space between potential and reality, but instead always capable of rebirth. The poet takes Jeremiah's image of being forever suspended in the womb and says, no, today, Hayom, we emerge. Today we are born. Today the world is born. My teacher, Rabbi Gordon Tucker, writes, the genius of our poet is that he appropriated Harat from Jeremiah and endowed it not with the meaning of ongoing pregnancy, but rather its outcome, birth. The same Hebrew root that once expressed the prophet's desire to escape existence now becomes our annual declaration that existence can be renewed. Hayom Harat Olam is what makes Rosh Hashanah so radical. We don't simply commemorate creation as something that happened once a long, long time ago. We declare that creation is our daily inheritance, our permanent possibility. Every Rosh Hashanah, we stand at a threshold between who we have been and who we might become. And it's not just every Rosh Hashanah. It's throughout the month of Elul when we say Psalm 27, where we are also encouraged to seek and pray for a world that can be remade. It's every morning when we say these words before the Shema HaMechadesh B'tuvo B'kol Yom Tamid Ma'asev Reshit. We say, thank you, God, who in goodness renews the work of creation every day. The essence of spiritual seeking is not to change the facts of our lives, but the frame through which we see them. Our tradition has always known what psychologist Carol Dweck now calls the difference between a fixed and growth mindset. When we have a fixed mindset, we say, I'm smart, I'm good, and I'm right. Like my initial defensive answers around the kitchen island. It's the voice that's within us that's very set, that challenges, that when we're asked challenging questions, threaten who we are. But we can also live in the growth mindset. We can say to ourselves, I can grow and I can change and I can learn. It's the difference between defending who we think we are and remaining curious about who we might become. When we face difficulty, spiritual seeking offers us a choice. Will we remain trapped in waiting, or will we dare to ask what's possible? Will challenging moments feel like problems to solve quickly, or like questions that are worth dwelling in? Will discomfort feel like a sign we're doing something wrong, or like evidence that we're growing beyond who we used to be? This ancient practice of seeking takes on new urgency when we see how many in our world have stopped believing that transformation is possible. It's true in our teens who worry that their identities become fixed on how they portray themselves on social media. It's true in politicians and personalities and even in rabbis who build rigid versions of themselves rather than daring to evolve. This call to seek, to show what's underneath our fixed exteriors, echoes even in the newest hit K-pop Demon Hunters, when they sing, "Why did we cover up the colors stuck inside our head? Show me what's underneath, fearless and undefined." Whether it's ancient psalms or modern kids' movies, something in us knows that we are meant to be more than our first answers and our carefully constructed personas. Hayom Harat Olam. Today the world is born. Today you are born. So I want to ask you, what answers are you seeking? What new beginning is waiting in your life? What can you birth in a relationship in your life? How can you birth a new capacity for forgiveness? Being a spiritual seeker cannot be done alone. It cannot be done in isolation because we need each other to emerge from the depths of where we're stuck. Our tradition so brilliantly guides us to answers that we didn't know were within us, to create kitchen islands for each and every one of us. And we would love nothing more for your kitchen island of possibility to be here at Temple Beth Hillel Bethel, to speak before you speak in Shul with us. Be a seeker of Torah, attend a class you might otherwise skip. Seek out new friendships, perhaps people in a different life stage than you. Challenge the very idea that feeling uncomfortable means that something is wrong. Look out for new opportunities to grow. In 5786, let's seek before we speak together. Let's be seekers together. Let's create spaces of honesty and growth and possibility. Let's remember together, especially on this day of Hayom Harat Olam, that the world is still being born, and that means that so are we. Shana Tova.